Welcome to Tales of Wales, the exceptional, engrossing and enlightening podcast that delves into the enchanting and ethereal history of Wales. Our aim is to explore the enduring and eclectic stories that have shaped this ancient and enduring land, with the epic battles of the early Celts to the struggles of independence in more recent times. In each episode, we'll invite you to embark on an exciting and enthralling journey through Wales, delving deep into the fascinating past and uncovering the extraordinary events and extraordinary characters that made it one of the most unique and remarkable countries in the world. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be enchanted by Tales for Wales.
Fucking hell.
Now.
That was fucking boom, 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 boom. You're hitting all your marks there. Good God.
That was written by my little friend, ChatGPT.
I was just about to say, don't get me wrong, I rate your writing, mate, but I was saying, fucking hell, he's not that good. He cannot be that good.
You might have noticed a lot of E there. I asked ChatGPT, can you write a Welsh history podcast intro that uses adjectives beginning with E? Because, we always do our enduring and long.
Oh, yes. Nice.
But he did say, I think he's used the same E quite a few times. So he said, explore the enduring and eclectic stories of this ancient and enduring land. Double use of enduring. We would never do that.
Stupid fucking robot, like this. So fucking
I keep saying,
isn't they?
I keep saying please, and I say thank you every time I use it, because I always think if it becomes like our overlord, he'll be like, oh, you're one of the good guys. So I'm not.
You don't want him to fucking You'll be last on the fucking chopping board when ChatGPT or GBT?
ChatGPT, yeah.
GPT. When he takes over, you'll be fine.
There's two theories: that it will take over and destroy humanity, or it will take over and look after humanity like we're pets. So, like, how we look after our dogs, that ChatGPT will just do that for us. Or
my fucking dog's got a great life. I'd fucking take that.
Yeah. I'd happily be an under.
Oh, sorry. Have the robots work for money while I just fucking get fed and, if something goes wrong with me, take me to the docks, pay for it all. Yeah, thanks very much.
So that's what I think, yeah. So that'd be class if it happened. I'd happily be some little pet for some.
I love that. Oh, the robots could take over. Oh my God, that'd be class. I can't wait for it. No, definitely. It's much more likely that they'll go, man, you lot of fucking dog shit are like looking after the place. Let's just kill you. And
what are they going to do?
We'll do a bad job.
We work all the time. Everyone's in debt. The climate change is going to kill the world. All this stuff. Like, surely the computers would be better, more responsible than us.
I'd like to think the computer wouldn't go, oh, should we invent a credit score? Oh, fuck off, mate.
What are you drinking?
I'm on the Stellas, mate, the Uri Gallas at the moment. I got a couple more of them, and I've brought up what was reminiscent of my bottle of lambs from the other night with this.
Oh yeah, I think I polished mine off today.
You were very close to.
Yeah, I bought a bottle. I'm trying to be healthier, so I bought a bottle of Smirnoff tonight because I assume that's lower calories.
Oh, nice, yeah. So just enjoying your drink a little bit less than if you were having spiced rum for minimal calorie loss.
It's got to be lower calories than spiced rum, isn't it? It's got to be.
I think it is, but I don't think it's by a huge margin.
Okay, I
think it's probably like, it depends. The thing is, they're all based on like how much calories is in a Smirnoff or a Lambs or whatever, a spiced rum. So it's all based off doing measures, and we never do measures. We just do it freehand, don't we?
So I would assume I'll do a bottle. Just do a bottle. So.
Oh yeah, it must be less because spiced rum's it's sugary, isn't it?
Fuck's sake! It's more calories in fucking vodka. Oh.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
No way.
It's 56 calories in a bottle of Smirnoff Classic per 25 millilitres. So per shot is 56 calories. For fucking Captain Morgan Spice Rum, it's 50.
Fucking hell! That's mind blowing to me because I assumed like spice rum would have loads because it's sugary, isn't it? It's like syrup.
Yeah. Oh, that is. Oh, yeah, this is
just done yourself,
vodka
mate.
21. Is that classic vodka 21? Oh, I am been duped by the fucking.
The Ruskies have fucking had you, mate.
They've had me. hang on here. No, yeah, that is the right one. You fucking Ruskies. Oh, I can't even say it right. You might tell I've got a fucking cold. I've been up in London, don't I, for work. So, and I always get a bit fucking nasally after.
You've been mixing with a metropolitan area.
Yeah,
so
with the
getting all the diseases and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. What? So you? So
Never leave the fields of Wales, mate. That's what I say.
I am having a Carlsberg though beforehand. I am generally pissed off that my fucking because I'll probably drink a lot of it. So those little carnies add up.
You've fallen for Putin's propaganda, mate.
Yeah, no. Rah, 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 Rasputin. I love that song. That's a banger.
You think what's going on in Ukraine's bad? Fucking hell.
Yeah,
the war is waging on your waistline is fucking... It's Jesus.
I mean, my stomach is doing a far less courageous battle than the Ukrainians are. My stomach flew the white flag.
Do you think is that your opinion on the situation?
It gave less of a resistance than those guys in Maripol, my old tum-tum. Oh god. Yeah, that was a bad noise. Alrighty then. I was going to say to you, I was speaking to Ollie on the weekend, our friend and friend of the pod. And I told him that I have two
friend of the establishment as well.
yeah, he is the hoi polloi that he is. I said to him, I've got two rules on life that we were discussing, like our friendship together. And one time he came over from Reading down to Cardiff. We had a massive night out, and the next day we were hanging. And if you're hanging, like, and you're ordering food, the only thing that's decent open in like the daytime is probably going to be like a Mackey's or a Domino's or something like that. He ordered a Chinese at like 12:30.
Jesus, a succulent Chinese meal at 12:30.
Yeah, and
I think they're open till that.
Well,
that
this
time.
is my thing. Never order from a Chinese that's open at midday. So like my rule for life is always only ever order a Chinese that opens from like 5:30 onwards, and I think that will stand you in good stead. And when it arrived, because he's on it, he ordered like a huge amount of food, and he ordered like two crispy beefs, like hoisin, duck and hoisin sauce, all this stuff, and it was just grey matter, just slop on a plate. And, and we were both really hungover, and we were talking to each other for a bit. And I think I either bowed out the conversation or something happened. I went, "Eat your beef." Just pointed it. Eat your beef, mate. Come on, get it down.
Shut up and eat your beef. I'm done with this now.
And that became like our code word for if there's like a lull in the conversation or we go quiet, just go, eat your beef. Go on, have a bit down, yeah. And we didn't speak about that for about like maybe 9 months. And then for Christmas, he got me M&Ms with a laser printed on them the words "eat your beef."
That is absolute dedication to the joke.
I know, it's mad. So when Emma and me were opening on Christmas Day, it was like it said like Franks. It said Ollie, "Eat your beef."
Jesus Christ, that boy's got more money than sense.
I know. Yeah. And then my other rule for life is never buy budget cola. And I know you do not adhere to my advice.
Frequent flouter of that rule.
I hate budget cola.
No, I always know when. You always know rather when if I accidentally mix your rum with some of my fucking budget cola, then you're instantly going. Like your face just tells me everything I need to know. You're like, what's this? What's this piss? It's mud water. It's muck.
Yeah, it's puddle water. What would your rule for life be if you were to give passed down to the ages?
Rule for life? Oh God, put me on the spot, mate. I don't know. Let me think now. Never turn down a free drink. That's when my granddad always taught me.
Be more on the nose. Playing to type here. Also, who would turn down a free drink?
Well, exactly. The fact that the rule needs even to be stated is actually shows how broken this country's become. But I remember. My granddad always used to say that. He used to say, "Never turn down a free drink," and then they're all very drink centric. And then he said, "I never trust someone who doesn't drink." I don't quite agree with that one.
I kind of do, unless it's like.
Yeah, I get where he's coming from, because why can't you drink? All right, medical reasons.
If you're religious or medical reasons, But anyone who's like turned down drink because it's always like, well, you must have been mad on the drink, so you've had to stop it. Which is
that's what my granddad said. Because I said, why not? The first time he told this, he said, well, why, isn't it? Why aren't they drinking? And I was thinking, that is a good question, and that's something I often ask myself. Why aren't I drinking?
I know I'll have to stop one day. No, I won't. I'll have to be the funny man in the pub. We're not like reckless. Well, I mean, like we, you do see the.
We love a sesh.
Yeah, I love the sesh, but I'm an absolute binge drinker. I'll work all weekend and the weekend Thursday comes, and that's when.
I treat it like I save up my drinking points. If I don't do it for a few days, then I get to really like spend them. It's great. I was just about to say, me and you constantly are bringing up that. Excuse me, what's his name? Bert Kreischer?
Krishna, yeah.
I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. American comedian. There's I'm sure a lot of our listeners would have seen this, but there's a like viral video of him going around talking about how much he loves drinking and like how he'll always make sure make sure he's always like healthy enough to have a drink because it's like the most satisfying thing in the world. And he goes on about it's this very impassioned speech. Oh my god, does it get you in the mood for a beer? Oh yeah, I'll link it in because fuck me.
I will never quit drinking. I will always make sure that I can keep my body healthy enough so that I can always drink. I love seeing a sunrise with a cocktail, seeing a sunset with a cocktail, having friends walk into your house with a bottle of wine, getting on a plane. Can I get you something? Double Jack on the rocks, lots of rocks. I love the moment someone says, hey, we should get a drink, and you're not supposed to. That feeling, it's like a first kiss. You don't get that first kisses when you're married. You get to have those first drinks. At a brunch, someone goes, should we do mimosas? And then the waiter goes, actually, we have bottomless mimosas. And you're like, this is going to be the best day ever.
Every time I hear it, I have to actually actively avoid it in the week because when I hear it, I'm like, oh my God, I got over a pint.
It galvanizes you, doesn't it? It's like, I just want to be with the lads and have a drink.
You said the other day, because you did something very uncharacteristic of you of late, which is go on like a 3-day bender. Yeah. And you said that on like the second day when you were Steve Ruglin, you put that on and you were like, I'm back, baby. I'm now. Like
we went to Nottingham for the hockey and for Cardiff Devils for the hockey, and I can't do 2 days on the trot. I'll have one biggie and then just cry the next day and eat food and hide and call my girlfriend. But because it was for like a 2-dayer, I galvanized with that video, and then I was on like Fanta ice blasts, and I was pouring vodka into them, and I was galvanized to Betsy. And then the Monday, I was going home, and I was like, oh, I feel fine. And then Tuesday, so I had drinks, watching Succession Monday night, got a bit bit drunk. My God, did Tuesday remind me that I'm 32?
Yeah, Jesus, it always does these days, mate. You think when you get those like off days where you're like, oh my God, I feel okay, like I can drink again, that's fine. 3 days, yeah, no problem. Oh my God, I'm young again. And then the next day, like you said, you get the 3-day like cumulative hangover, then, don't you? And it's just like, you dared fucking mock the god of death.
I reckon we should crack on with this episode because you've got a few tales to tell us.
I got a few little Arthurian legends to get on with. Yes. So if that didn't give it away, we're talking about King Arthur today. I'm assuming most of you know who he is, or at least have heard of him, or a few stories about him and his famous Knights of the Round Table. Basically, he features a lot in folklore and mythology from all over the British Isles. And it's been hotly debated, been a very hot topic for a long time, whether or not he was an actual real person. So a few real-life people have been suggested as the sort of basis for the stories of King Arthur, including a 3rd century Roman general, Lucius Artorius Castus, a Romano, British...
Romano. Yeah.
Ray Romano, we've done that joke, but it is still as good as the first time. A Ray Romano.
We've done a joke before. That's the whole premise of this thing. It's history.
Don't worry. There's a few little notes I've made in that just rehashes of what we've done before. So feel free to call me out for him. So Romano-British war leader Ambrosius Aurelianus. He's been mentioned before in the previous Ambrosius.
Ambrosius and Anus is in the second part, so that's funny.
Yeah, exactly. So double bubble, 2 bites of the cherry, love it. and there's even a few Welsh boys that may have been the inspiration. A guy named Owain Dant Gwyn, aka Owen the White Teeth. Ooh, love it. That would be quite the. That's some absolute pearly whites back in medieval times. So that's great.
Hollywood smile.
And a guy named Arthwys ap Meirig, who was king of, and they were king of Gwynedd and Gwent, respectively. So it could be these guys. Some historians sort of put their necks on the line and say that maybe these were real people. But if you read all the King Arthur stories, they apparently span over like hundreds and hundreds of years. So he can't possibly have been around for all that time.
But he's a Welsh.
Well, this is the thing. So they it kind of got adopted a lot by English Christians and things like that. That's what, like Sword in the Stone and shit like that. That is like an anglicised version of it. Arthur in sort of Celtic mythology was a bit different. Any listeners who've listened to Mythology Part 2, the story of Culhwch and Olwen, how everyone was like had superpowers in that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like with a lot of faiths and stuff, though, Christianity sort of had an influence on, especially when they're the ones who were writing things down. They sort of cut out all the fantastical elements a lot. So yeah, but the earliest mentions of Arthur are actually in old Celtic prose and things like that.
So that's our link to being able to talk about him on this Welsh.
So that's why we get a free pass to talk about anything Arthur, because he was a Welsh boy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, through and through.
Either or. So, whether myth, history, or a bit of both, it was said that King Arthur drove the Saxons from Britain at the Battle of Badon after the Romans left in the 5th century. The first definitive mention of King Arthur is said to be in the Historia Britonum, aka the History of Britons, which is, surprise, surprise, a written history of the Brittonic people at the time, compiled by a Welsh monk in the 9th century. However, there is mention of Arthur in some earlier Welsh texts, such as a poem from the 7th century called Gododdin, which is a Welsh manuscript. More on that later, I'll get back to that.
Can I check? But he drove the Saxons, not the Anglo-Saxons, so that's the...
He fought the Saxons, yes.
Yeah, and
he
they're
also
different to the Anglo-Saxons, aren't they?
Yes, that's right. So he also had a little bit. He had the occasional scrap with the Angles as well, who were kind of like a different faction. But his predominant enemy was the Saxons. He was also known as like the Saxon Slayer.
Yeah, and then later on in life, the Angles and the Saxons, the ones who settled, became the Anglo-Saxons, who became the English.
Yeah, they kind of merged into like sort of East England.
I always think it's helpful
East
clear that
Southern
up,
England,
because it can be a bit of a confusing story.
So I've done reading on this myself because I was confused as well. So the Saxons are kind of like sort of Germany, old Germany. Yeah. Angles are kind of like a little bit north of that, and they were separate factions at the time. Yes.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Basically, I'm trying not to go
No, I'm joking. Don't worry. Don't bog yourself down. Google it, lads, if you care that much.
Google it if you're so fucking interested in history. Why don't you listen to a podcast about it? Yeah. Anyway, so even though a lot of his most famous tales came later, he sort of become synonymous with a more sort of English-centric version of Britain by now. He had strong ties to old Celtic folklore, as I said before, and like I said, he's a homegrown Celtish lad for us, so that's why we get like carte blanche to just fucking do his stories on this. So I'll begin with his name. So the etymology of it is widely disputed, like a lot of his sort of history and stories, but a little bit of trivia focused on the sort of Celtic side of things. His name apparently comes from the old Celtic word Artorigios, or the Old Welsh Arthur, which is obviously very close to the thing. But both of those, in Old Celtic and in Old Welsh, mean son of the bear or bear man. Which I thought...
Do you know, my mum was going to call me Arthfile, which means bear prince.
Oh.
So I could have been Arthman's... Arthfile's...
the reincarnation of Arthur himself.
Imagine going to school in Barry and being called Arthfile. I'd have been fucking battered.
You had enough fucking trouble saying it was Alin, not Alan.
Don't you dare dead name me on this.
Dead naming. Very good. Arthfile. But yeah, so that's a little tidbit. That's just for anyone who likes etymology there. The fucking losers. Anyway, So this episode, I'm just going to go through a couple of Arthurian tales, give you a flavour of the guy and his exploits, and we'll be basting these as usual with a nice little bit of a tangents and buffoonery, a little bants. You'll love it. It'll be great. So the first story I'm going to go with, it seems like an obvious one. This is going to be how Arthur came to be in the first place, according to legend. So I'm going to talk about his birth and sort of the run-up of events to it. So anyone who's listened to a previous episode of ours called The Treason of the Long Knives, they might recognise this name now, but the story begins not long after the Saxons Hengist and Horsa had conquered King Vortigern, aka Viggo Mortensen, along with most of Britain. And Eldol, if you remember, Eldol, he, for those who don't know, or those who've forgotten, he was the only man besides King Vortigern to survive the Saxon ambush on the Treason of the Long Knives. So he, Eldol, had teamed up with a Ray Romano-British guy called Ambrosius Aurelianus, who we mentioned earlier, and they managed to retake Britain now, as opposed to Britain. After some bloody battles, Ambrosius managed to push back the Saxons, and Eldol enacted his revenge on the coward King Vortigern by burning him alive, leaving Ambrosius to take the throne of Britain. While this gave them some reprieve, the country was still in a state of war with the Saxons, and Ambrosius relied heavily on his brother Uther to help lead his armies, along with the wizard Merlin to give him counsel and guidance. And I'm sure keen-eared listeners will know the name Merlin, of course. Little wizardy boy. After a string of battles, Ambrosius was taken ill, leaving Uther as the de facto leader. It wasn't long before an assassin, posing as a physician, would poison and kill Ambrosius, very much implied to be on Uther's orders. That very night, a comet passed in the night in the shape of a dragon's head. Merlin knew this as a sign of Ambrosius' death and informed Uther that he was now king. Uther succeeded in a string of battles against the Saxons and declared himself Mr Pendragon on his return. Pen meaning head in Welsh. I actually looked up. You'd think it would be Pendraig, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Or something like that in Welsh. But it wasn't. It's like Pendragoon or something like that. I don't know if that's like an old Welsh thing. Or fucking goon, yeah. But anyway, so after his return from beating the Saxons, he was officially crowned king, and dubbed himself Mr Pendragon. So to mark his success against the Saxons, Uther invited all the lords of the land to feast at his castle. One such lord, Duke Godlois of Cornwall, took advantage of his +1 and brought his absolutely banging wife, Aegir, Igraine in the English version, but we're sticking to the Welsh. So Uther, he was a massive enthusiast with the babes, right? He loved a good babe. So he decided he absolutely needed to bang this Aegir girl, despite Duke Godlois being a massive help in the war against the Saxons.
Treachery.
So Uther, I know, absolute bloody handsy motherfucker. But Uther gets a bit drunk, gets a bit handsy, pushes things a bit too far, and massively insults the Duke Godlois, causing him and his wife to leave in a huff. So back in the day, I was reading about this, and back in the day it was a massive insult to whoever lord's house you were in, to just leave without leave, without sort of saying goodbye, if you like, yeah. So Uther was furious about this. The relations between King Uther and Duke Godlois worsened to the point that Uther went to war with the Duke's forces in Cornwall. Uther had pushed the Duke back to Tintagel Castle, Godlois' impregnable fortress, and despite the king's experience in battle, he could not penetrate the Cornish Duke's defence. Desperate, he rode to a mountain peak overlooking Tintagel to speak to Merlin. He begged him to help, basically guilting him by talking about all the bloodshed of Britons and whatnot, how much he loves the Duke's wife, etc. But in reality, he just wanted to fucking get up to his nuts in Aegir's guts, essentially. He's a wrong 'un, mate. He's thinking with his fucking willy, isn't he? Merlin agrees to help him anyway, on one condition, that he receive the next child sired from his and Aegir's union. So, as I said, thinking with his willy, Uther agrees. He just wants to bed this fitty Aegir. Merlin conjures a spell on Uther, making him look like the Duke Godlois, and summons a fog that blankets the ground between them and the castle Tintagel. Merlin advises that his horse will now be able to run across the fog directly to the castle's front gates. Uther rides across the mist and easily enters the castle. With the Duke busy with his war council, Uther goes to Aegir's bedchamber and has his rotten little way with her. Still looking like the Duke, he orders his men to open the gates, leading to the slaughter of Cornish forces as well as the real Duke Godlois. Aegir realises what's happened when the charm wears off and Uther returns to his normal pervy appearance. I like that bit of the story in that he was like, look, ultimate victory for me and my boys, or get my end away first. First things first, priorities.
Prioritise.
And then get the boys in to slaughter everyone. Anyway, 9 months... Ooh, you gotta love that sound.
Yeah.
Anyway, 9 months later, at this point, Uther has married Aegir. Uther has also inherited a stepdaughter from Aegir's previous marriage called Morgan. But he didn't really give a shit about her and was now way more excited at the prospect of an heir being born, potentially. So Aegir gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Uther named him Arthur. Fucking get a bit more original, mate. Mm-hmm. And before any celebrations could be had, though, old Merlin turns up, reminds him of his oath. Uther is fuming, but knows better than to mess with fucking big dog Merlin, like top knob fucking wizard. So he hands over his son. Depressed by the loss of his heir, Uther begins to lose ground to the resurgent Saxon forces and becomes ill, although he still insists on leading his armies into battle. This is quite a cool fact. I thought you'd like this as well. Well, it's not fact, it's myth, but you know what I mean. Despite being dubbed by the Saxons as the half-dead king, he even manages to kill one of the Saxon leaders, Octa. Now, Octa was the son of Hengist, so for those who either listened to the episode on Trees and Long Knives or not, he basically was the son of the old Saxon leader who orchestrated the ambush on the Trees and the Long Knives. So at a battle at St. Albans, the half-dead king, Uther, kills the new Saxon leader. Uther would soon be killed himself, though, after Saxon troops poisoned drinking supplies at a feast celebrating the victory. So, yeah, that's basically Arthur's birth, if you like, and how his father kind of was a dirty little pervert.
So is that the first tale?
That's the first tale, baby.
Yeah, I like that there was a connection to a previous ep. We've got threads running through our pod.
Exactly, that's why I picked it, mate. I was thinking, I saw the names like old Viggo Mortensen and Hengist turn up, and I was like, we got a narrative on the go here.
Do you want to hit us with the second tale?
So this one, I'm hoping you like this one. I thought you might. This isn't so much a tale, right? It's they're a bit shorter, and this is like one of the earliest references of Arthur in those poems I was on about before, called the Gododin. But I thought they were pretty cool, so I thought I'd share them. I'd share a few verses. Basically, it's really fucking long. There's like 100 and I'm not sure how much it was now, 103 verses. I just sort of very much briefly skimmed through them. Almost all of them are good, though. I have to say they're pretty fucking good. Yeah. And what they are is, just to give you a sort of background before I go into it. They're a collection of basically odes to fallen warriors that died at the Battle of Catrife, where they were slain fighting Angles around 600 AD. So while the contents of the poem are sort of considered mainly fiction, they're sort of making up names of potential warriors, and embellishments, and it's not that it actually happened, but there's it's meant to be a battle where a Celtic force of around 663 men, I say around exactly that amount of men, led by a guy called Mynyddoch Mwynfawr. He was king of Gododin. He led these men against an Angle force of 10,000, according to the poem. So Gododin, just FYI, was a kingdom in what was called Yr Hen Ogledd back in the day, or Old North in English.
Old North.
It's basically where Edinburgh is today. It's around that area. The story goes that King Mynyddoch selected 363 warriors from across the Brittonic lands, mainly from the Old North itself, but some were from as far as Gwynedd, Welsh boys representing, and they even invited warriors from Pictland, which is modern day kind of northeast Scotland, which was kind of not done back in those days because they were considered kind of like barbarians, if you like. But yeah, so he had a best warrior, 363 of the best warriors he could find. So the king of Godolphin allowed the 363 men to feast in his halls at Dunedin, aka Edinburgh, for a whole year before they began their march to the Angle stronghold of Cattraeth, which is Catterick in Welsh. It's apparently in North Yorkshire, by today's standards. I do think it was mad, like going, just drink and eat for a year, then we'll go to fight. Like, mate, I'm gonna be so not on my best if you're having me fucking scoffing and drinking for a year. It's not gonna happen.
It'll be your actual pick. Maybe that's what athletes need to do. You drink for a solid year and you become peak.
Yeah, the fat just falls off you, become an absolute battle-hardened bastard. So the Brittonic forces were unfortunately soundly defeated, with only one man, Cynon ap Clydno, surviving. But according to the poem, many of the warriors died well and accomplished great feats before they fell.
And just going to again, it was 363 versus
363 versus 10,000 supposedly.
Yeah, I mean, big odds.
I mean, you're always going to lose. A bit stupid marching down for that, really.
Yeah,
but
no wonder they kept staying there for a year.
I know.
I'll tell you what, lads, one more week.
Oh, come on. It's a leap year, though, isn't it, last year? So that means we get an extra one this, surely. Come on. So I'm just going to bang out basically a few that stood out to me as quite cool and badass.
So
I'm going to do the English translations. Because there's mention of Arthur in it. It's one of the earliest mentions of Arthur in this.
But he hasn't been mentioned yet. He's going to be mentioned.
Not yet, no. I will get to that. It's so very slim, the connection. But I like this, and I thought you'd like it, so I thought, fuck it, I'll include it and use the gift of the gab to try and, pass the fucking the board.
This isn't considered a real thing, or is it a...
This apparently might be a real thing. It's debated, but it's probably made up.
Embellished, yeah.
Yeah, embellished, certainly embellished, because I'm no doubt the Britons did fight the Angles, but it wouldn't have been this. So, like I said, the whole thing's 103 verses, and there's a few that stuck out that are pretty cool. I'm going to read them in English. I'm not going to do the Welsh, just to save time. I highly recommend reading it because it's just like 103 verses of badass soldiers, essentially. It's like, it's not almost every verse, but every verse or couple is about the deeds of the ridiculously overpowered soldiers. So it's quite cool. Listen to this now. I think you'll like it. So this first verse is actually about a soldier named Owain, right? I'll try my best to get through this without stuttering too much. So, man's mettle, youth's years, courage for combat, swift, thick-maned stallions beneath a fine, stripling thighs, broad, lightweight buckler on a slim steed's crupper, glittering blue blades, gold-bordered garments. Never will there be bitterness between us. Rather I make of you song that will praise you, the blood-soaked field, before the marriage feast, foodstuff for crows before the burial, a dear comrade, Owain, vile, his cover of crows, ghastly to me that ground, slain, Marrow's only son. Just the fart right at the end there, by the way. Poor Owain, lamented. Yeah. So this next one, this is a bit more badass. This one's about a soldier named Bleithig. Right. Savage in war, stubborn in distress, in a battle no truce would he make. The day of wrath he did not shun strife, a boar's rage had Bleithig Mab Eli. He guzzled wine from bowls made of glass. The day of strife he performed a feat on a white stallion before he died. Crimson corpses he left behind him.
I like that one more.
I thought that was pretty cool. That's just you got it definitely for me conjures up some fucking cool imagery, doesn't it?
Some guy who'd be the last man standing.
Yeah, exactly. So the next one is just kind of a general description of the battle. Godolphin's warband on shaggy mounts, steeds the hue of swans in full harness, fighting for Aiden's treasure and mead. On Mynadhawg's orders, shields were battered to bits. Sword blades descended on pallid cheeks. They loved combat, broad line of attack. They bore no disgrace, men who stood firm. So another one about just being brave in the fucking... brave lads, fucking brave lads. So this one, next one then, is about a guy named Erthgl. A man went to Catraeth at dawn. Ringed round him a rampart of shields. Sharp they pressed the attack, seized plunder, loud as thunder the crashing of shields. Ardent man, prudent man, champion. He ripped and he pierced with his spear points, deep in blood he butchered with blades. In the strife, heads under hard iron. In the court his hewer bowed humbly. Great hosts would groan, facing Erthgol. He sounds like a pretty badass guy.
Yeah, I guess that's me.
Yeah, that would be you, mate. Yeah, that's you're an absolute Erthgol of a boy. Ringed around him a rampart of shields. So go on now to the one that mentions Arthur. So it only mentions him sort of very loosely, but it's actually about a warrior named Gwaurdir. He thrusts beyond 300, most bold. He cut down the centre and far wing. He proved worthy, leading noble men. He gave from his herd steeds for winter. He brought black crows to a fort's wall, though he was no Arthur. He made his strength a refuge, the front line's bulwark, Gwaurdir. So basically, it's this guy going, "Oh, you were pretty good, Gwaurdir, but you're no fucking Arthur, mate." Which I thought was a bit of a slam, an unnecessary slam on the poor boy.
What? So when get us to the Arthur?
Do you not hear me say Arthur?
yeah, no, I want more of him.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, yeah, that's the only reference.
Does he die in it in this version?
Who, Arthur?
Yeah,
he's not bloody in it. You listen to these weird fucking stanzas.
I think they're quite hard to follow.
They are a bit.
So,
yeah,
you said
basically. He basically they reference, this is the earliest reference, or one of the earliest references to Arthur, in saying that, like, although he's this Gwaurdir is very, very good and like he killed 300 men or whatever, he's no Arthur. Arthur is even better, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought unnecessary slam, like he put to bed fucking 300 men, and then they're going, no Arthur though, you mate.
You'll never be an
Arthur.
Harsh. You'll never be an Arthur.
So yeah, I'll leave it there. There's a lot of good ones though. If you're into that sort of shit, like I said, it's not the most linear of things to follow, but I quite liked it. And obviously you didn't, so I'll just go.
It was hard. It's hard to follow, I think, unless you're reading it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. You're telling me my fucking soignol voice is not doing the job.
Maybe it's because I'm tired.
And I can't be fucked, yeah.
No, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's perfect.
Yeah, absolute selling point. Alright, I'll go on to my last one, which actually does concern Arthur this time in a proper way. The last story I'm going to tell is the Battle of Camlan and the death of King Arthur. That's right, we've come full circle. I set it up, I knocked it down. We had the birth, we've had the death. Like I said, I could have done bloody Sword in the Stone or Lady of the Lake or fucking Holy Grail or whatever, but everyone knows those stories, so I'm just going to do these ones. So, a bit of background. This battle was between King Arthur and Mordred, who had brought together a force of Brittonic rebels against the king. Mordred was the nephew and son of King Arthur. So, to explain that a little bit, there's a few different versions, but basically Morgan, Arthur's half-sister from before, if you remember. It's probably quite confusing, so I'll go through anyway. I've written little notes to pad it out a bit. Arthur's dad was Uther, if you remember. Uther married Aegir, who already had a daughter from a previous marriage. That daughter was Morgan. Morgan grew up to be a witch and was also really resentful of Arthur for what his father had done to her and her mother. So it basically winds up that Morgan uses magic to trick Arthur into shagging her so that she could sire a new heir to the throne. In other versions, they sex it up with out knowing what they are to each other, and in other ones, there's different versions, but that's the one I'm going to go with because I like the idea narratively to think that she's like a fucking sick pup that would do that as revenge. Arthur and Morgan shag, and 9 months later, she gives birth to a son / nephew called Mordred. Morgan taught Mordred to hate Arthur the same as she did, and they often conspired against King Arthur and his knights throughout their adventures. So flash forward, and Mordred has gathered his rebel army against King Arthur, and they meet on the battlefield at Camlan to talk terms. Both sides were evenly matched, and no one would be able to call it in a fight between Arthur and Mordred, both being known as two of the best warriors of their age. While Arthur hoped to solve the issue with words, he ordered his men to attack at the first sight of a drawn sword, so they wouldn't be caught off guard. Arthur and Mordred agreed on terms that Mordred would be given the lands of Kent and Cornwall to rule while Arthur lived out his days. Once Arthur passed, the crown of Britain would pass to Mordred. Arthur believed that in time he could get through to his son/nephew and help him along a better path. Before the two could shake hands, an adder appeared before one of Mordred's soldiers. Startled and fearing a poisoned bite, the soldier drew his sword in defence. Arthur's army, acting on their king's orders, drew their swords in kind and charged the rebel forces. A bloody battle ensued, and after many had died, both forces stood and watched as their commanders battled for victory. The battle was arduous and brutal, but King Arthur would eventually land a killing blow on Mordred at the cost of a deep wound to his chest. While the King of Britain had won the day, his wound was too severe to recover from. Knowing he was at death's door, he ordered his men to carry him to Ynys Afallon, the island of Avalon, the forging place of his sword Caledwell, aka Excalibur, where he died. The throne would pass to his cousin Custennin, or Constantine, who would face a long struggle against the freshly emboldened Saxons. So that's it. That's what I got. Oh. That's what I've given you on Arthur.
He died. So do they charge because there was a false flag of a snake?
Well, basically...
Well, not a false flag. They saw them pull the sword out because the snake was there.
Yeah, because, what's his name? Mordred's soldier saw a snake, didn't want to get poisoned, so pulled his sword to kill the snake, unaware that Arthur's army were, instructed as soon as the sword's pulled to just fucking charge him. So class. It was... Oh, it could have been done. It could have been done by words, but it didn't. History didn't have it in it.
That sounds a bit like the battle in... Well, maybe it's not, but in Alexander the Great, where they make... Or is it Troy? Where they have that fight at the start, where it's just general v general instead of having everyone else come and die.
Oh, yeah, that's it. It's like... That's it. They sort of... All the people, who are hell bent on killing each other just stop and watch the two fucking big nebbies have a go at each other.
Yeah. Oh, but he didn't. I'd rather. It's like in The Last Kingdom. Oh, what's do any spoilers? But I sometimes like the hero to die a really dramatic death. But being carted off to his first thing, that's quite peaceful and quite nice.
Yeah, it was nice. I know what you mean though. I prefer when they go out with a blaze of glory.
So what year was that meant to be?
Oh, this was... Oh, God. I did write it down somewhere. But
and is King Constantine... Because King Constantine's a real king of Scotland.
He was a real king of Scotland. This guy was a king of Cornwall.
And is he a real person?
And he was a real person. He was cousin of King Arthur, supposedly. Custennin or Constantine.
I like it as well. When you find people with names like Morgan back in 1500 years ago.
Morgan.
I always find that so fun.
Also, no one's got any creativity for naming their kids, and back in those days, my name's Uther. What are you gonna name your kid? Arthur.
Yeah.
My name's Morgan. What are you gonna name your son? Mordred. Fucking Christ.
It's too many similar, too close. It's fucking so complicated.
It does make in the Long Knives episode where it was Vortigern, then it's Hortigan, Belortigan. So Jesus Christ, it's too much.
So how much time has passed from the first story you told to the last one?
Well, this is where things differ. So one source said thrice 7 years, but not between the first story. Between when he got Excalibur. So he's in his early 20s, I think it was, when he got, by some sources, when he got Excalibur. So he's apparently thrice 7 years, and what's that, 14 21. And 21 years after that, so he'd be 40 something.
Yeah, and when so I meant the first story you told, does it give a date for when that was?
Well, it does say for the first one, I think it was 600 AD, I believe. Let me have a look. I did write it down. So 600 AD. Well, basically the end bit I told there about his death and the birth one, they're part of a series of stories by a guy, and I can't fucking remember his name now. I should have kept the bloody tabs open. He was a monk. He was a bloody monk. And they're sort of romanticized versions of certain things. And these things go through so many iterations.
Okay, do you think he was real? as a fan?
I think they were based on a real person. I reckon it was someone who did some shit hot stuff back in the day. Maybe like a shit hot warrior or something like that. Maybe even a leader who like united people, defeated big armies, and then sort of everything gets attributed to that one guy then, you know, because this, like you said, if you're going off when he was first mentioned to like when he was last mentioned, they're like hundreds and hundreds of years, so there's not one guy who's spanned that entire
You should do another one where you talk about him and his knights.
Yeah. There's, to tell you what, his knights have got some of the more interesting stories where Arthur is kind of like a background character, like Culhwch and Olwen, like from the Mythology Part 2. I love that story, and he's like only a tidbit in that.
And Merlin was definitely from Wales, wasn't he? Well,
yeah, what was his name in Welsh now? It's fucking Myrddin, of course.
Yeah. You should do another one rather than them, I think.
Well, there's so many stories with him and like the surrounding characters that we could easily do another episode with him.
Yeah. Well, I feel rotten eggs, so let's...
Fair enough.
Let's... do you have anything else to add on old Arthur?
Arthur? No, I think I'm alright now. I think I've done my bit. We'll save it for the next one, little scissor reel.
Yeah, alright. Well, diolch yn fawr am gwrando, you little rat bags. And follow our... click the link in the bio to get to our socials, because then that would be very nice of you. And drop us... if you do a 5-star review, we always appreciate that.
Yeah, diolch all. Ta-ra, 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 ta-ra.